How's it going, everyone? Well, as you can tell by the title of the video, this is the trigger polishing part 2. As you can tell in front of me, this is the L9A2 MF slide in 9mm, and this particular one has been modified in my TN Steyr cuts and is 100% disassembled. This step isn't truly necessary for the action polishing and the trigger polishing. This just happens to coincide with another video that I'm doing, so it'll be kind of a two-part video. One, at the very end of this, I will show the full reassembly for those that are wanting to know what all the component parts are of your slide and how to take them out or put them back in. But this is also going to go over all the small features and parts that I'm actually going to touch and work on for the polishing. So let's get into it, and I'll show you what we got on the table. Alright, well, as you can tell, this is my TNS slide cut design on the new MF. The top of the slide has been serrated and has the chevrons for the forged serrations. It also has 4 different window cuts for porting of the barrel, or aftermarket barrels if you want to see the design, if you were to do some type of custom barrel that had some type of fluting or design put into it. But at the moment, this here will be the stock barrel that I'm going to be running. Hopefully on camera, since this one's still all the same color, it's just more window cuts for the time being, but this barrel will be getting magnet ported. So more than likely it will follow in my design in the V6 formation, which will make just these front 2 ports functional in the magnet porting. The rear ones are strictly for lightening of the slide. So this slide is 100% disassembled. It has been black nitride coated after all the milling and work. So that's it. The only thing I've done to it is it has gone through a sonic tank to get all of the grease and particulate stripped out of it. So this slide is, the only oils or stuff on it is actually for me handling it with fingers. So it's clean. Here is the factory guide rod, and if anybody follows the channel or knows, you know I'm real big into for replacing the polymer. I have yet to have a Steyr guide rod fail, but the fact is the captured system here on the end, I just do not trust. I've had issues with other platforms in the past, so I always upgrade, and I like to run a heavier, solid one-piece captured guide rod system. So this particular one I picked up when I was actually in Texas, in the Houston area with Ranger Point Precision. I stopped by their office and got to say hello and picked up a few other parts. But this here is one of their competition ones in 15 pounds. This original spring is in the 18 to 19 pound weight for the 9mm. And this spring, if I wish to keep it at this rate, on their new guide rods, you do not have to destroy your old one. You can actually leave this, set it off to the side, and run this one. It is running lock mainspring, so if you wish to change out your weights, I have found with a 9mm about 13 pounds, 12 to 13 pound mainspring weight is the lowest you can go. You can go as high into the 22 to 23 pound, unless you're really going to run like some super hot P ammo that you're loading at home. But I would recommend on the low side, stay in the 14 to 15 pound range for light loads, you know, for the slide, for the weight. If you want to go to the high side, I wouldn't recommend going anything over 22 pounds. So this particular one I'm going to keep off to the side, and I'm actually not going to dismantle it. If you want to know how that's done, check out my other videos on these guide rods. But for the long and short of it is you need to cut the polymer in half to strip the spring off, melt the tip off of it, or figure a different way to get it off. The easiest I've found is to pull the spring, melt this tip with a torch, or heat it up so it gets gooey. The spring will pop right off, and then the guide rod is junk. So not doing that with this one. That's going to go there. This new one, we'll pull it here from the package. Packaging is always nice, typical with Ranger Point Precision. So that's always, a nice factor. Everything's done up. This guide rod is an additional 1/2 ounce. It is solid. I'll get you some numbers and post in my description of the actual weight difference. The other nice thing is with all of their parts that need it, they come with tools. So if you wish to take this apart, here's your Allen key for the captured system. Remove this capture nut, the screw that's in here. It'll come out, and then you can put on your different mainspring. So there's going to be the new one we're going to put into it. Getting into all the pieces and parts, and guys, sorry, you're going to have to kind of deal with me because this is a 2-part video of the reassembly and all of the action polishing. From the original dismantle, if you saw that video, it was on Facebook, and I did the re-upload to YouTube, so it is there. It was kind of a live stream that I went over and took it all apart. But this will be all the parts, and I'll show you and tell you what they are, and we'll get into the reassembly and all the polishing and what you're going to need. There are some very small parts in here, especially the C-clip. When I say small, guys, those of you that are hunters, this thing is the size of a seed tick. It's extremely tiny. Do not lose this. You will be SOL. Alright, and we're going to double check the bag, and the bag's done. Alrighty, we have our sight, the front sight, our rear sight with the Allen set screw. Let's see here, set that over to the side. This here is your chamber indicator, and this is what the C-clip actually mounts to on the rear. This here is your extractor. Here's your extractor spring and retaining pin. Here's your rear chamber indicator, the little toggle in the back of the slide. There's your spring for your chamber indicator for the back. Sorry, I misspoke. This is actually the retaining pin for the back plastic of the pistol. Here is your set pin, and here is the roller, and these are fitted together. They will not just slide in. These have to be pressed or actually used with an armor set. But there is the striker roller, which is part of the Gen 4 and Gen 5 upgraded trigger system in the Steyrs. And then, as saying, there's your very small C-clip. So, we're going to put all this over here, inventoried it. These are all the parts that you should have, along with your striker and your striker spring. Do not take your striker spring apart. There's no need, ever. Well, let me take that back. There's no need in cleaning this, playing with it. There's no adjustments to this that can be made. Guys, here about 6 months ago, I kid you not, hopefully I can catch you on camera. You'll see this spring looks like it's got an inchworm effect to it. It's bent, it kind of moves around a little bit. It does not lay flat like a guide rod spring does, how this one's nice and flat. Like I said, about 6 months ago, I must have had 10 or 15 people call me and tell me they're trying to do trigger work, improve or lighten the trigger, and they saw that this spring was bent, so they took this thing apart, cut the spring, and now they're having light primer strikes or just failure to fire. You do not mess with this spring. There's a certain amount of tension. It needs it. It's designed this way. There is a company that builds a different type of retaining pin to capture this. I do not personally use them. I don't have experience with them. I hear good things, and I've heard some bad things. I do not have my personal experience with them. I know of them. I just haven't used one. So if you try one, go for it. Let me know. You can leave comments about it. That's the BT spring cups, and you guys will have to look it up to truly explain it. But basically, instead of this being like a C-clip retaining. The other one is a piece of metal that's machine cut in half. It's beveled. You put it on, and then the spring slides over it and captures it. And it takes a little bit of the pressure off this spring. So I do know people talk about with very hard primers, they're not getting primer strikes. So to avoid that headache, I just don't do it. So the only thing you need to do with this is clean it. Wipe it off, lightly oil, which, I mean, the grease on your hand will work. Do not fill up the striker with oil or grease or do anything. It will jam this. This does need to float. It'll kind of stick on its own, but it kind of floats inside. So there you go. All right, what we're gonna get into polishing on this one is I'm actually gonna polish up this striker. The reason why is when this goes in, this tail system, this is what sits inside your frame that the catch catches on. We're gonna polish up the front face of this. These are really nice and tumbled. We're just gonna kind of put a shine to it. I'm gonna buff it up, make sure all these edges are dressed. There's no rough spots or machine marks. We're just gonna smooth this up a little bit, polish it, and that will be it for this. You just saw the time warp here of it. It didn't take me too long. I probably spent about 10 minutes or so was that last portion of the video of getting this all dressed up and polished. Normally, I like to start off, I normally use 1000, I get some 3M, just wet dry sandpaper. This here is some 1000 dry. It's just super fine, and I've got some 3000 for the finish work that I was messing with. So if you were curious what sandpaper I was using. And we dressed up this edge. I took out some of the machining marks and cast marks from it and just dressed off the corners. And now, when you can actually run your hand on this, you'll feel a lot more. You can feel some of the drag area, and all I did was buff that out. And then hit it with the metal polish. Knocked out all those edges, buffed up everything, and now it's nice and slick and shiny. So, there's that. Move some things out the way. Now, once everything's all done, I will clean everything. Normally, I run this back through the sonic tank or wipe everything down really well and then re-oil for the reassembly. So, that is it on the actual striker. So if you were doing this polishing job and you did not strip the slide all the way apart or don't need to redo the reassembly, this here is part of the polishing. The rest of the polishing will actually take effect strictly by hand on the internal rails once I have this matched to the slide. Currently my slide is out, or sorry, not slide. The slide will be matched to the frame. My frame is currently out at the moment, so I will not be matching this one right away, but that was basically the final part of them, is just to make sure all the contact areas, and you'll actually see it. Most people come back to actually, when they do a slide matching, there's a couple different ways to do it. If your gun's been Cerakoted, nitrided, messed with, once you run it, you'll actually see all the contact point areas. You'll see where it starts to strip and go to raw metal, and those are kind of key features of the two factors of doing stuff. You can actually shoot the gun and it'll wear itself in and match itself. And that's 90% of what people do for polymer pistols or like a GI-45, of all steel component gun that has to be totally matched. Mine, when I do it, I just go through and kind of touch all these, knock off some of the coating to start that process a little bit faster. so it'll adhere to itself, and I don't have paint on paint trying to slow down the slide function. So that's just my take on when I do this. Alrighty, for those that want to get into the reassembly, here we go. This part of the video, since we're done with the polishing, this here will be strictly the reassembly of a slide. This reassembly of the slide is going to work on all of the L models, Gen 4 and the Gen 5 MF. It will be very, very similar on the M models that have the chamber indicator in like your Gen 3, Gen 4 guns that actually had one. And that particular one, let's see guys, I don't have one in the M model, but I can show you on this one. Your chamber indicator will be right here in the middle below your sight. Very similar. It'll be the same function of getting one in and getting it out. So it's just a different location. So let's get together. We're going to put the striker and the spring together. That'll go there. The hardest parts and the things you're going to need, and sorry, I'm moving and cleaning my desk all at the same time, so I have some room to move. You are going to need a tool set, an armorer's hammer and punches to get these in, and they are some small punches. I've given the punch sizes before, and since I've done some work and put some things away, I need to pull out the exact ones that I'm going to use. All right, make sure these pockets, that's there, this one. That's the dwarf pin, which will be the smaller one. Yep. All right. Sorry guys, I'm having to move a couple of these. Alrighty. So, we're gonna do the hardest ones first. I'm kind of getting situated here. A good set of hemostats, or a very, very small set of needle nose pliers are going to be required, besides a small brass hammer. You can use a ball peen or brass hammer, armorer's hammer on there. Do not use the white one, which I will show you. This here is kind of like a hard polymer, kind of like a chair leg slider. This here will actually chip off and you'll get little pieces of it inside, so don't use one of these. You can use the brass, or you actually just use the steel portion or the rubber side. So let's get into this here. We're gonna set in let's do our injector first, since that's kind of easy. And I hope you guys like the videos. It shows that I'm kind of unprepared and just mess with this as a leisure thing. The flat blade screwdriver is a little necessary. All right, so on your spring and on your extractor claw, you need to make sure that the edges do match up, that you don't rotate this out. And what I mean is, and I've shown this in other videos, you do not want the angles to be wrong. They do have to match each other so they line up and get positive contact. The spring inside. All right, and we're gonna push it in. What you're looking for when you set your extractor back in is the clog does go to the inside. you're looking for that nice positive match here, and you can test your extractor by sticking the screwdriver here. You'll see it grab. All right, that's back in. All right, there's that. Oh, well, sorry about that. Battery went out. Okay, guys, well, getting back here into the spring. So as I was installing this and showing you, you'll need to put the spring on the very tip of the safety indicator, kind of angle it towards the slot for it, and then on the angle, take the screwdriver and just push the spring into place until it's captured. Then you can rotate this up, and you can drop in the chamber indicator and try not to drop it completely through the pistol. So placing your thumb here at the end will actually help. Okay, this is where your very small C-clip comes in and a set of hemostats. I'm hoping that I actually have a small enough pair to do this today. If not, you will need a very, very small pair of needle nose pliers. Alrighty, just grip the C-clip. The way this will work, and I'll have to show you this before I actually install it, because this is so small it's not going to show up on camera. There is a groove cut for the C-clip. It's here at the back. The other tricky part to this that will need to be done is for the roll pin, this actual drift pin. You will need to have this rotated to the 12 o'clock position, so this pin will actually slide through, and it holds this in when you put the bearing and everything all together. So I'll explain that in just a second. It's not that difficult. You can actually cam it from the inside. By pushing it, you can just kind of rotate it where you need to be to line everything up. So to get this in, like I said, you're going to insert this in, keep your hand in the front so you don't push it too far through the gun. I normally just stick my finger through like so. All right. Now this becomes kind of difficult. Make sure you've got some good lighting. Okay guys, so that took just a few minutes. I had to make sure that the cam is correct. Just so it helps you guys all out, there is kind of a teardrop portion to this which needs to go down. The easiest way to check to make sure that the cam location is correct for the drift pin is to take your very small punch, which this is a 1 1/16. It will actually go through where the roller pin support goes, and it should be able to push all the way through. If you want to start from the right hand side, if you get any type of snag, it's not in the right location. So this here is one of the two most very difficult parts to reassemble on your pistol, and the only reason for this to ever be removed would be for replacement or for coating work. This is not something you're going to ever really have to deal with, nor will be the next step of installing the roller and pin for your sight. This will need to be done before installing your sight, because the actual bearing has to go in through the top before your sight can go back on. So if you install and put your sight on first, it's going to be very, very difficult. So with this pen, we will start it on the right-hand side. Lightly tap this pen because you really do not want to put any gnarl marks on it. You can actually see from the inside, and hopefully you can see this on camera. I'll get out this small punch to show you. Here is where this pen starts to come through, and now you're going to have to install this bearing and get it to line up with your sight and drive it through. And this is a very, very form-fitting bearing. It will be a pain. So, with that being said, we're actually going to install a punch here towards the back. Let me get a larger punch. And we're basically going to use it to hold our bearing. And this just becomes a time management issue of getting this bearing to go exactly where you want it when you need it. And it looks like we're going to do it from this side. Nope. So, I am going to install this. It will probably be something that's going to take a few minutes longer than what would be necessarily on a camera, since not to fake it or make it seem like I just dropped this thing in here and it went the first time. So I'll probably time-lapse this, or we're going to come back to after I have this installed and start pushing the pin through to grab it. Unless by some chance and miracle that it happens to go right now. And I guess you guys can hang out for the ride and I'll figure this out in editing. Well guys, you get to see the miracle of doing this more than once. Make sure you don't push the drift pen too far through. We've got a little bit more ways to go with it. I can tell you from experience, this has got to be one of the easiest ones I've gotten to reinstall. I'll go just a little bit further. Make sure that pin. There is a groove, in case if y'all are wanting to know. I guarantee you are not going to see it on camera because it's kind of a shadow effect on the inside of how this works. Once you have a bearing out, you'll actually see that there is a set groove inside. You can actually feel it with a punch. So if you were to run, let's say this 1/16, it'll go completely through. But if you grab the 5/64, you'll actually feel it go in and hit that little that retaining wall, and it just will not go any further. So we've got that reinstalled. Like I said, that's actually one of the easier ones for the roller bearing. That's how your bearing goes in. It just sits there. And now we can install, and we're going to do the rear backing plate. We're going to install the spring housing, which is your last spring and the little nubble for it. Spring goes in. This is going to set on your L. Goes in just behind the chamber indicator. Your flat blade screwdriver will be necessary to pull this down. Yep. Okay. Sometimes I actually end up using a punch on this. Do be mindful if you stare at this particular part while you're trying to install it, and if you are to slip, it will catch you in the face. So please be warned, don't do that. It does suck if you take a spring to the face. Alright, I just used the 5/64 punch, push it from the top side, and did that just to install to hold this. Now, the reason I did this before installing my striker is I'm checking to make sure everything lines up on the back for verification of my work. It just saves a step, but you would normally install your striker and your spring. It goes here into the channel. It's not that I just skipped it. I wanted to double check and to do a safety function check of my chamber indicator. Easy way to do it is to take your file, so you can take a flat blade screwdriver and push on it here on the front, and you should see it moving in the back. There we go. That's it. Just a little bit of movement. Make sure nothing's stuck. Need a bigger punch. That's it. That's all it moves. That little 1/16 of an inch. Okay, so that works. We're going to pull this apart here real quick again. Install our striker. Now this is where the bearing actually rolls on the top side of this, and that's kind of gets into where that polishing comes in for this bearing. Once you have that inside, you see how it cups in, and this here is the top view of that bearing, and it just glides the top and keeps the channel and any trying to think of the proper word, the deform under load is basically what this roller goes on. It just very lightly glides on the top, and that makes all the improvement to the trigger that is needed. That's what separated your Gen 3 to Gen 4 guns. So we'll get back into reinstalling this. Again with the punch, I'm just coming in on top. You do have to push that very, very far down. As soon as you do, the rear goes in, it will click in. It's normal to have that little bit of slack. And our slide is reassembled all but for the sights. So, doing that, it is necessary when Steyr installs these sights, they do put a little bit of glue or tacky material here. So we're actually going to clean that up. I take a little bit of the sandpaper. You can really start to see that glue now once I got the sandpaper on it. You can actually take your flat blade to it if you wanted to and scrape it off that way. I'm just going to lightly buff that off. Alright, that part's done. Now, you will need a small Allen to remove the rear sight set screw. I am finding that now. And let's see if I can help you out and tell you what a bit it is. It is a 1.5. It's just a little Allen. So we'll set that off to the side. A big thing for anybody that wants to do sights on Steyrs, the dovetails that are milled into the factory Steyrs, if you guys are not doing the RMR modifications, which totally reworks and puts a different dovetail, and there's some welding and milling all done here. But factory Steyr sights or factory replacement Steyr sights, this is for all models, all generations, doesn't matter. If it's a Steyr polymer pistol base, the sights, the drifts, they have to go from left to right to go back in, and when you take these out, they will all come out to the left-hand side. Just to make that clear, so that way no one gets it confused for my left, your right, or vice versa. The sights all go in and out from the non-ejecting side. So the side with your extractor, that's the side you will be opposite on. You will push into or push away from to get your sights out. If you push them in from the opposite direction, you will screw up the mill work, you'll damage your sights, and they will get extremely hung up and will take twice as much pressure, and then they are just not going to fit right. They may even work their way out. So with doing this, sights, I recommend a sight tool. If you do not have a tool, a punch, a nylon punch is recommended. Be very, very careful. Take your time setting these in so you don't damage or screw up paintwork or anything. And then you can use sight tools. There are some universal ones, but if you'll take your time and just slowly use a drift pin, which like this one here is a nylon punch. You can actually use a small piece of dowel rod or a small brass punch. Just take your time. You can actually do your own sight work and clock everything correctly. So on this rear one, what I'm going to actually do just to kind of help this along is a little bit of oil on for two parts. One, since I just installed all this and I want to make sure the top side of this bearing has some lubrication so I don't have to drown it later. The other thing I'm going to do is lubricate the channel. I probably put too much, but I'd rather have a little more. So we're going to do that, and we're also going to do the bottom side of this sight. And this process will work for any of the sights. So if you happen to use the TFX sights, the factory trapezoid sights, or if you end up with a set of 3-dot sights that Steyr makes, you'll be good. All right, so we'll start that to insert. We're going to push it as far as we can, and then this becomes the fun part of a light tap. I'm going to start off with my rubber mallet side until I flush it. We're going to rotate this over. Make sure you actually hit here on this dovetail. Do not hit on the edge of the sight because you can roll the metal. Okay, guys, a little bit of oil. You see that went 90% the way. So now we're going to take the nylon punch, set it here in the corner. Alright, now when clocking and running your rear sights, it's real easy to tell. You're looking for the actual peaks. This all makes a pyramid, and you'll be able to visually see where it's at to get the just baseline of your sight. There's always some tuning you can do with one later if need be at the range. As you can see, this one is really far on the left side, so it still needs to go over about 1/8 of an inch. the further you go to the right, the tighter it is going to get. So it takes a little bit more pressure to get that over. You can actually feel it in the walls. And the nice thing with my slide cut design is the chevron cut here is actually centered for the center line of the gun. So if you can line up, you can actually see it as you look down, and we've got that one set. So the rear is in. Take your set screw, tighten that up. Do remember that is a fine thread. It is just to lock the sight, so do not over tighten it. When you feel it bottom out, I just barely clock it. I'm not even going 1/10 of the rotation, guys. Once you feel it bottom out, just 2 fingers, snug it, and it's good. You can actually put Loctite on that once you have your sights set for exactly where you want them so they don't move. The oil makes all the difference in the world of setting on the sights. So there's that one. Now we're going to do the same thing for the front sight. Okay everyone, well we're back. Well, as you can tell, I got the front sight put in. This one definitely was difficult. It took me a few minutes. That's why I went off camera, just to spend the time with it, not to knurl anything up. But just to show you guys, there's the right hand side. There's the left hand side. So this can be done. It just takes time and some patience, some small tools to get this one in. This one definitely was stiff. But at the moment we have it clocked for center line. I will have to take it to the range to actually adjust the sights to get it. So there's your reassembly on your upper on your slide from a complete bare strip to a reinstall. And talking about the polishing job to finish off the polishing for the trigger work. The only thing that's left to do is when my frame comes back to me here in about a week will be to mate these together and check everything for some wear on all this new paint and nitride. Same would work for a brand new gun. You can look up and down the rails and see if you have any wear marks or anything needs to be checked. You can probably repolish or dress this if it needs to be a little bit more. This is the striker is simple to pull out to do the polish work to the top. So this will be the barrel. One thing I will be doing with this particular barrel, it has been polished before. I probably will put just a finer touch on it since I shot it, but is the polishing of the ramp and the throat of the chamber. I like to high-speed polish these out. It works with a very simple Dremel tool. Moving around just a different bit, up and down on the ramp, and then just throat inside the chamber. Get it all polished up. It'll all look like this. And then that will be the final, which this one was done off camera a while ago. So sorry I don't get to show it to you, but that's how you polish the feed ramps. For the breech, that'll go in, and your new guide rod sits in the front. Pins, and we have a reassembled A2 upper. So that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope the information will help you get yours reassembled or taken apart. If you ever wanted to know how it goes in and out, you can see how the polishing goes. And the next time that this one comes out will actually be on a range day I'm going to be going to at the end of the month. We'll be shooting it, so probably mid-December, I'll have you all some more video. We'll actually take this out, run it, and you'll see all the modifications, and hopefully we can get a trigger weight on the exact poundage of what the trigger pull is. Alrighty, y'all. Well, have a good one, and enjoy the holidays.